truth for the battered but proud people of the Empire State. From the financial and entertainment epicenter of New York City to the sleeping and empty small cities and towns of upstate, which once bustled with manufacturing, mining, and farming. We all know from inspiration, history, and nature, we deserve a return to the success and growth of generations past, a birthright being squandered by corruption in Albany, and the depredations of an insecure, scheming mountebank posing as governor, who loathes both us and himself. As liberty beckoned to enslaved peoples behind the Iron Curtain via American broadcasts after World War II, we now say, believe, rise, and join us. Welcome to Radio Free New York.
Hey guys, welcome to Radio Free New York. I'm your host, Andrew Hollister, and we are in the WYSL studios with Bob Savage.
Oh, that'd be me over here.
Yep. So this weekend, was pretty nice. Those of you watching the live stream probably see my sunburnt face. So I did get a little bit of sun over the weekend.
Just a perfect weekend, basically. Not a cloud in the sky either day.
Yeah, no, it was beautiful. Got some bike riding in, had a good time. And here we are on Monday with some rain and but
just a little shower, no biggie.
Yeah, no big deal. So we're streaming live here on WYSL. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Periscope, all those major platforms. Take the time to go ahead and share this out to your friends on social media. We've been getting a lot of people connecting in, a lot of new listeners, people reaching out, and a lot of them are saying, well, my friend told me about the show. So friends, keep telling your friends about the show because it's great. We're expanding. And I see you guys are already filtering into the live stream. So welcome to the show, Michelle, Yolana, Dan, and a few others in there. I can't see your guys' names, but it tells me that you're here. So thank you guys so much for joining us. One of the things I want to talk about today is the difference between legalization and decriminalization. Because these words are used a lot right now in the media. People kind of think that they're the same thing, and not a lot of people know the differences. And I want to talk about in terms of marijuana, since it was signed. Well, Cuomo hasn't signed it yet that I know of, or at least I didn't see anything that said he signed it. But the Senate and the Assembly in New York State did pass a new decriminalization bill for marijuana. And so I thought this was a good time to talk about the difference between decriminalization and legalization, and then also talk about what this bill says and some things that I saw in there that I wasn't aware of, that I'm going to share with you guys. A little bit of history on marijuana in the United States that I knew absolutely nothing about. For those who are listening, I've never really experimented with drugs in my life before, so some of this stuff, is rather new to me in terms of the education. So I'm going to share this with you guys, and then I'm going to tell you guys something in this bill that especially Second Amendment supporters and people who oppose the SAFE Act should be really, really happy about that this bill does. It's something that I don't think really got much attention, but kind of opens the doors for us a little bit. So we'll talk about that as well.
I'm sure it was unintended.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely. No, they did not pass this thinking like, oh, somebody could this build some infrastructure for repeal of the SAFE Act. So yeah, that I can guarantee you was not intended. However, here we sit. So excited about that. So let's just start off. Let's go ahead and talk about decriminalization versus legalization and just talk about the differences because they are being used together. So when something's decriminalized, it's still technically illegal, which is kind of a weird concept. So it's not criminalized, but it is illegal. So what does that really mean? It's
a little less illegal.
Yeah. It's just you're not going to prison for it. It's not going to show up on your criminal record. Somebody does a background check on you, and it it won't show up there as like a criminal issue. So think of things that are illegal that don't show up on your criminal record. Think of things like parking tickets. Those are like violations, littering, loitering, speeding. Let's see, talking on your cell phone. They keep like bumping that up. I think it's still not criminal yet, but
No, it's not a misdemeanor or anything.
Yeah.
They just increase the fines.
Yeah, they just keep bumping up the fines and taking away your money. So those are things that are illegal, but they're not criminalized. So it sounds weird to even say it, but the government has grown to the point where there are just an enormous amount of things that are illegal but not criminal. Whereas legalization is actually legal. There's no violation for it. There's no fine for it.
Right there, you put your finger on it. That's the major difference. Mm-hmm. Government can't use it as decriminalization means, well, we're going to keep it illegal, like
just
on the
to
books.
Take your money.
So that's a pretense for us to snag money out of you.
Yeah.
So what's the fine now? If it's less than an ounce, it's $50. If it's between an ounce and 2 ounces, it's $200.
$200. Yeah. And that's actually something that we'll talk about a little bit. Is this whole decriminalization of marijuana in New York State is just they couldn't figure out how they were going to tax it. So what they did is they decriminalized it from I think it was 24 grams or 25 grams, now up to 2 ounces. And what that means is if you're caught with it, you're not going to go to jail. You're not going to face criminal penalties, but their hand will be in your pocket. They will take some money out of your wallet. So they're essentially turning this into a tax. People say,
but it's a tax on something you can't buy legally. It's a bizarre thing. We talked about this last week. I mean, so how did you come by this marijuana that's illegal to buy and sell?
Yeah.
Unless you grew it yourself.
Is it illegal to purchase or only illegal to sell? I didn't see anything about purchasing, but I haven't dug that deep into it.
No, but I mean, there's a distinction without a difference because if it's illegal to sell, then then how did you purchase it unless it was the product of a criminal act?
I would assume, and I don't know this to be true, but just talking about like tobacco sales, right? It's illegal to sell to minors, but if a minor has possession of a cigarette and smoking, it's not illegal. I wonder if it's similar. I don't know. But yeah, so that's interesting. And that actually brings up a question I had, and I was going to talk about later, but now's a good time to bring it up, this is possession based on the weight. So if you now decide to grow a marijuana plant in your backyard and it is under 2 ounces in weight, is that legal? And I don't know the answer to that question, but I was thinking about that. I'm like, okay, so if possession is legal and you now grow a plant, you haven't purchased marijuana, technically. You're not selling marijuana, technically, but you're growing it. And I don't know how big the plants get. I don't know how quickly you hit 2 ounces. I don't know if it's just the leaves.
They get pretty big, don't they?
I don't know. I've never seen a marijuana plant before. Well,
I've seen them. I've seen them. Not that I didn't grow the marijuana, but believe it or not, I worked at a radio station in Elmira where the studios were downstairs, and then you came up this big, broad staircase up into where the offices, the executive suite, reception area was, and there was a planter. And the chief engineer planted pot in the planter at the radio station.
There you go. Yeah.
I saw the pot growing there, and as I recall, this is like back in the 70s. It got fairly large.
Did it? Yeah. So I don't know. Is it just the weight of the leaves? Is it the whole plant? This starts getting me thinking about questions that
Yeah, you dig it out of the ground. There's this ball of roots. It's got all this dirt, this clump of dirt hanging onto it.
Yeah. So where's the weight?
Is that the weight? Is that included?
Yeah, I have no idea. So that's just a brief thing on decriminalization versus legalization. That's the difference. Decriminalization, they're still taking your money. Legalization, you don't have to worry about the cops coming after you. So we're going to take a real quick break here on Radio Free New York. And when we come back, we're going to talk about this actual bill that passed the Senate for decriminalization in New York State.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
A reminder from Abate Monroe County. American bikers aim toward education. Distracted driving is dangerous, so pull over and eat. Don't try to read your mail and newspaper, and stay off your cell phone. Make a mental note to be more alert, making it a habit to expect the unexpected. Remember to look twice. Save a life. Train yourself to watch for motor.
All right, coming back.
Harder to see. Join Abate, and your family will be protected with a free 4,000.
Feel free to use that story.
Ride safe. Ride free. Ride often. Abate. If you ride with us. Google Abate Monroe County.
You're listening to Radio Free New York
On the WYSL stations.
And no, we do not have pot growing here at the radio station.
No pots in the pot, huh?
No.
You know, it's interesting, actually. I saw somewhere, I don't remember where, somewhere here in the U.S., people were putting pot plants in the potholes. And they called it pot for potholes or something like that.
Waka.
So that the government would quickly run out and fill the potholes to eliminate the pot plants. There's a lot of creativity around this. And what we were talking about in the break, one of the Bobs, I can't remember which, said, what if somebody gifts it to you? You know, it's not selling.
Illegal.
It's not
selling.
Purchasing. Does that mean it's now? Well, I guess it would be not technically legal, but also not technically criminal.
There's no sale.
So, yeah, there's no sale. So there's a lot of good questions, good things to think about here. Checking in the comments, Michelle actually mentions that the pot plants grow into a large bush. So, but once again, I don't know. Do they consider pot the whole plant? Do they consider it just the leaf? That's maybe a little bit outside of the research I did on this.
I think it gets big. I think it gets several feet tall. So it's got to weigh more than 2 ounces.
Yeah, but if they're only counting the leaves, if you keep it well trimmed, are you okay? And that sort of thing. So I'm not really
probably
sure.
you don't smoke anything but the leaves, right? So I'm assuming that you trim the thing back and you get the leaves, and that's what they count. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. So what I did for you guys, because I saw article upon article upon article all throughout like Friday, the weekend, I heard people talking about, this decriminalization bill. And I was like, let me go ahead and read this. Right. So I printed out a copy for myself and for Bob.
Is that what I'm looking at here?
Yeah. That's what it is. And the first thing I saw they spelled marijuana with an H.
Yeah.
And I was confused. I was like, did they misspell this? Did they like screw this up?
No, I think it's for some reason it's a bizarre thing. I think this is kind of like the legalistic law enforcement way that you spell marijuana, because we get all these press releases from police agencies, right? Monroe County Sheriff's, Livingston County Sheriff, City of Rochester. And all of the press releases, when they say Andrew Hollister, former lieutenant governor candidate, was arrested for possession of marijuana, in the 7th degree or whatever it is. So they always have the H in there. So I guess that's like the official government spelling.
Yeah. So I looked into it and I was like, well, what's the difference? Because at first I thought it was a typo, and I was like, how did the media not catch this? I literally was telling one of my coworkers, I'm like, how is this misspelled like all throughout this bill? Nobody's talking about this, you know? So I started doing some research and stuff. And sure enough, I found that there's two spellings, one with an H and one with a J. And it got me looking because some states, I think it's Massachusetts, actually has a law that defines marijuana as both spellings. And that got me thinking, well, does New York State have a law defining it as both spellings? Couldn't find one. Maybe on the books, but I couldn't find one. So I started doing some research, and I was like, what about the federal NICS background check? How's it spelled there on a federal level? Spelled with a J. So this is pretty interesting. So I'm looking through this, and I'm trying to figure out where did this come from? Oh, actually, I've got it here in my notes. Michigan. So Michigan basically wrote up this thing saying they will accept both spellings as meaning the same thing. And so I'm looking, and I cannot find any like true difference between the two spellings, but it's got me wondering if there can be a legal difference or not. And if somebody can say, well, you know, in New York State, and this isn't the Second Amendment piece, by the way, this is just something that I happened to come across. And I was like, well, if it's marijuana with an H in New York State, but federally it's with a J, you know, can you answer that question differently on the NICS check if there actually is a legal difference? Now, I can't find one, but we also don't have a law like Michigan does saying that it is the same. So that was one interesting thing. So I started doing some more research and found out that that this spelling with the J actually became popularized in the 1930s. And it's really interesting because it goes back to Mexican immigrants. I guess we were having an issue then with Mexican immigrants, and they changed it to a J because they were trying to, when they were having issues with trade, they wanted it to sound scarier like Mexican immigrants. And so this is really interesting piece of history on how this kind of evolved. And then we created the Marijuana Tax Act in the 30s, which I didn't even realize, once again, not being, you know, somebody who partakes in marijuana, not really ever even being interested in it. I didn't realize that marijuana was actually traded, imported, and exported in the United States. And in the 1930s, we created, the federal government created the Marijuana Tax Act, and that was their first attempt to regulate and make money off of marijuana imports.
It's bizarre. Wasn't that when Reefer Madness, you know, the cult favorite movie came out, like in the late 1930s or something?
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. But it costs you $24 is what it costs to get a federal tax stamp to sell marijuana. And you had to inventory it and provide records on demand. It's really interesting. It actually sounds like the process was very similar to how FFLs have to like purchase and sell guns and keep records and all of that. And it wasn't until the 1970s with the Controlled Substances Act that marijuana became illegal. So I'm like seeing all this.
Legal
and I'm
until
like,
the 1970s? Really?
That's according to, all of this. And then, so here's what I found even more interesting. Like I said, this is all new to me. I didn't know any of this. I don't know how many people did. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection actually has a page about this. So I've got their website pulled up. I will actually post the link here for you guys in the comments so you guys have access to it. Those who are listening on air, if you want to, hop over on Facebook, I just posted the link on in the comments here. And hey, here it is, right from cbp.gov, customsborderpatrol.gov, under About History, Did You Know Marijuana? Spelled with a J, not an H. 100 years ago, the federal government was not overly concerned with marijuana. The common name for the cannabis sativa plant, initially spelled marijuana with an H, is also known as hemp. Mary Jane, Mary Wagner, blah, 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 a whole bunch of,
Whoa, Mary Wagner?
Yeah, that's what they got on here. It says, by the 1930s, several state governments and other countries had banned the drug. The U.S. government hesitated, in part because of therapeutic uses of cannabis were still being explored, and the American industry profited from commercial applications of hemp fiber, seed, and oil. Marijuana was not classified as a major drug, unlike opium and heroin, which were prohibited under the Harrison Narcotics Act of 1914 and subsequent restrictive legislation. As the political climate changed, the Federal Bureau of Narcotics Commissioner Harry Anslinger became a powerful anti-marijuana voice. His campaign against cannabis led to the passage of the Marijuana Act, spelled with an H, of 1937, under which the importation, cultivation, possession, and/or distribution of marijuana were regulated. It goes in to say that you'd pay an annual tax of $24, you'd get a marijuana tax stamp, and it would come in each order, marked, regulated, insured, all of this stuff. Customs collector would, go through and check on it. And it says violation of the act resulted in a fine of not more than $2,000 and/or imprisonment for up to 5 years. Now, we're talking 1930s. I mean, that sounds like a lot of money in the 30s. I don't even know what the equivalent of $2,000 would be today from the 1930s.
That'd be a lot of money.
That'd be, I think it's you
could buy a nice new car for $895 then.
Yeah. So I'm thinking it's probably more like $100,000 today or something would be.
It might be that much. Probably 2,000. I know in the 1950s, a household income, a decent middle class income was around $5,000.
Yeah. So
that's a lot of money.
Go. Yeah, half a house. That's a ton of money. So I bring all that up, because I had no idea. If you read further through this, it talks a little bit more. And it says by 1970, marijuana was classified and restricted on par with narcotics, and new tighter laws were enacted. So it's pretty interesting. Actually, in the bottom here, it says, just prior to the passage of the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937, the Customs Agency Service compiled a narcotics manual that reported, and that's got in quotes here, marijuana may be cultivated or grown wild in almost any locality. Inasmuch as this drug is so readily attained in the United States, it is not believed to be the subject of much organized smuggling from other countries. So it's
because you can grow it in your own backyard.
Yeah, you grow it in your own backyard. Yeah, so this was kind of like mind blowing to me, because my whole life it's been illegal, and I never really stopped and looked and researched to even think about the fact that it was legal at some time. And it's funny because a lot of times when I'm talking with certain people, or even candidates are interesting. I had one candidate when we said, hey, if marijuana comes down to a county level for vote, are you going to vote to allow recreational marijuana in your county? And his response was, I grew up in the 70s. Almost everybody I know grew up in the 70s. We all seem to be a lot better off than your generation. So I don't see the issue here, which was a phenomenal answer.
I think there might be some other opinions on that.
Yeah, sure. But what was interesting is a lot of times I hear people say, well, I grew up in the 70s, and they usually associate that with marijuana. I never understood why until this point where I go, oh, marijuana was legal up until the 70s, and probably it being illegal in the 70s is probably still in fairly heavy use and less regulation compared to, where we are today, or maybe a few years ago before other states started legalizing it. So that was really interesting to me, as I'm going through. So when we come back from this next break, guys, what we're going to talk about, what this Senate bill actually does in New York, what it doesn't do, and then how this could help us out with the SAFE Act. So we'll be back here in a moment on Radio Free New York.
You're listening to the voice of liberty. WYSL. AM 1040 Avon, Rochester, FM 92.1 Rochester, FM 95.5 Spencerport, and WYSL1040.com everywhere.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to Simple Tech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention to detail. Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that Simple Tech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at Simple Tech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at Simple Tech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
We'll treat you like family at Mark's Pizzeria. We'll treat you like family at Mark's Pizzeria. Great pizza, fresh and good. Simply the best in your neighborhood. Come in, we'll get to know you. Call you by name. We can bring it to you any time of the day. Mark's Pizzeria. We'll treat you like family. Mark's Pizzeria.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause
Last spot.
downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovations should be your first call. They've won the best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
Radio Free New York on WYSL. AM 1040, FM 92.1, and FM 95.5 West.
These high school boys and girls are having a hop at the local soda fountain. Innocently, they dance. Innocent of a new and deadly menace lurking behind closed doors. Marijuana, the burning weed with its roots in hell. In this film, you will see the ease with which this vicious plant can be grown in your neighbor's yard, rolled into harmless-looking cigarettes, hidden in an innocent shoe or watch case.
If you want a good smoke, try one of these.
You will meet Bill, who once took pride in his strong will as he takes the first step toward enslavement.
All of a sudden, he starts groping this girl. Laughing demonically.
The soul-destroying reaper, they
Still tied up on the innocent shoe part. The shoe.
At a terrible price. Debauchery, violence, murder, suicide, and the ultimate end of the marijuana addict. Hopeless insanity.
Oh, yeah. This is the trailer, audio from the trailer, Reefer Madness, 1936.
Yeah. So that's That's something
kind of like definitely a B movie, I would say.
Yeah.
Maybe about an H movie.
Yeah.
If not a J movie, if you know what I'm saying.
There you go. Yep. So I want to welcome a few more of you to the show. I was just checking the comments here in the live stream. So thank you for joining us here, Sarah, Yvonne, Aniko, and Tony. Guys, thank you so much for joining. Feel free to ask some questions in the comments. We're going to talk about this Senate bill that passed here in New York, pending Governor Cuomo's signature. But before we do that, over the break, I took a quick look. We were talking about how in 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act was passed by the federal government, and there was up to a $2,000 fine for not complying, basically not having an import tax to sell marijuana. In 2016, that was the equivalent to almost $29,000. So $29,000 fine.
Good chunk of change.
Yep. Oh, actually, you know what? It looks like I can adjust the date here. So today, $30,000, $30,600.
You know, because you had this legislation come out in the late 30s. Reefer Madness came out in 36. Yeah. It's like it's like something happened then that all of a sudden there was this tremendous public opinion cataclysm where, and maybe it's tied to government's going to get their hands in the revenue stream.
Yeah.
Because this is obviously a propaganda film.
And I don't think it's any coincidence that the propaganda film comes out in 36, then in 37 the legislation passes.
That's interesting.
It's a little timeline there that wasn't aware of. So what is this bill? So this is Senate Bill 6579A. It's got two dashes in front of the A. I don't know.
As in assembly.
Yep.
No, this is a Senate bill.
Yeah, no, this is the Senate one. Okay. So,
I think the A comes first if it's an assembly bill. That's
assembly,
right. Okay.
Yeah. So, right off the Senate website, they've got just a little outline here of what this bill is supposed to do. So they say decriminalize possession of small amounts of marijuana by reducing the penalty for unlawful possession of marijuana to a violation punishable by a fine. Establish procedures for automatic record expungement, both retroactively and for future convictions. This part's going to be important for us later. Removing criminal penalties since a violation is not a crime for possession of any amount of marijuana under 2 ounces. Reduce the penalty to a $50 fine regardless of criminal history for possession under 1 ounce, and a $200 fine regardless of criminal history for possession of between 1 and 2 ounces. And add marijuana to the definition of smoking under the public health law so that smoking marijuana will be prohibited in any circumstances where smoking tobacco is prohibited by law. So that's their outline. Here's the thing that's really interesting to me. On this page, marijuana is spelled in that outline with a J. Yet in the bill, it's spelled with an H. So it's still inconsistent. I don't get it. And if you click on the bill from there, everything in the bill is with an H. So once again, that slight subtlety, I think that it really wouldn't matter, but it's just interesting to me that it's that inconsistent.
Well, for it to be legally leak proof, I would think they'd want to say, for purposes of this legislation, marijuana H and marijuana J shall be
the same, but yes. I couldn't find that anywhere.
Yeah.
That's what.
More sloppy legislation. Okay.
Yeah, basically. So what did this bill change? Right? What was it like before? So before, it was only illegal to have more than 25 grams. So now it's been expanded to under 2 ounces. So that's the first piece. There was also a public loophole that you couldn't have it in public. So say you had 24 grams, you were under the limit, so it wasn't criminal. But an officer says, empty your pockets, and you empty your pockets, it's now considered in public, and the 24-gram part doesn't count anymore. So it was a loophole that apparently was being used a lot. Because it came up in multiple articles as I was reading that by it being in public, the 25 grams or less no longer counted. And when people were asked to empty their pockets or when they were going through a search, it was now considered public and basically canceled that out. So they eliminated that piece, and it was still punishable as a crime. So these are the things that that have changed. Also, moving it up to 2 ounces, eliminating jail time, and putting on a criminal record, but it's still illegal. So that's why we had the beginning of the show to explain the difference between decriminalization and legalization, because although it is not criminal, it's still illegal, which is just confusing. Selling is still a crime as well. So what does this mean for the average Joe? What this means, and my belief is, New York State lawmakers couldn't figure out how they were going to tax marijuana sales. That's just what it came down to. They didn't have the infrastructure in place. They didn't know how they were going to tax it. They figured people aren't going to collect sales tax out of their backyard. So they're like, all right, let's give people 2 ounces. Let them feel comfortable enough that they can carry this stuff around. And when they are caught with it, we'll just tax them by taking their money. $200 for 2 ounces, this is $100 an ounce, basically. If you go through the Wegmans buffet, people say that's expensive sometimes, and that's $7.99 a pound. So,
that puts it in perspective.
Yeah, putting it in perspective there, that's pretty, pretty heavy weight there. And I don't know what marijuana costs for an ounce. I haven't even the slightest idea, but I bet you it's not $100 an ounce. So it's.
I thought I heard something like in the state stores, if they were going to start selling it legally through state stores, the recreational pot, it was going to be some quantity of it was going to be $100. I kept on hearing.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows? Of course, I guess that's probably 75% tax in there.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing. I don't know how big an ounce of marijuana is, so I don't know if we're talking like a small amount or like a half a container or something. I'm assuming it's dried leaves, I think. So I would guess it's fairly light.
It wouldn't burn if it wasn't dried out.
Yeah. So, very, very fun to talk about. But here's the part that I think is really, really important to talk about. And this is the part that I think is, first and foremost, I don't think marijuana should be illegal, right? So I'll just get that out on the table. We've talked about that before. I think what you choose to put in your body should be up to you, as long as you're not using it to harm others. I do, however, also believe that it shouldn't be accessible to children. You're under 18 years old. You should not be giving it to a child the same way, unless directed by a doctor, the same way parents aren't supposed to just be handing out Vicodin to children. I would kind of follow that process there.
Or Juul vaping thingies.
They explode and all of that.
Even if they don't explode.
Yeah. So I say all that to say, there's a piece of this bill that, the decriminalization just to me feels like virtue signaling. They're trying to find a way to collect more tax. I'm not impressed by this at all. I'm not. But what I do like is that they've added expungement to this bill, and the ability to expunge not just future records, but past records. This is something Larry and I were talking a lot about for the SAFE Act. New York State doesn't have infrastructure right now for expungement of records when something becomes legal. This builds that infrastructure. So it's really great. It's in the last page here on page 4, basically lines 3 to 31. And basically what it gets down to, let me just pull up my notes here. So up until this point, there's no expungement in New York, to my understanding, for anything, like anything. So if you were found, if you were wrongly charged, accused, and sentenced, and then later you were let off, those court records still exist. That still ends up on like criminal background checks, all of that. And the court records continue to keep those records. Well, this actually says that so it gives automatic vacator, dismissal, and expungement, including record destruction if requested. And it basically goes through and says how the state and the courts will now have to create a process for expungement, which includes destruction of the records. And further down, it actually says when you request this, it has to be done in 30 days. Not only that, it says when a criminal history is created in a report, a criminal justice services search is done for your criminal history records, it cannot contain any of those expunged records. So why do I see this as so important? I think of somebody like Ben Wassell, whose court case is being appealed again by the state AG, and we'll see it. There's supposed to be an announcement about what is going to happen with that. But even if it wasn't, even if his court case was just done, he's no longer a felon, those records aren't expunged. This builds the infrastructure to make that possible. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back on Radio Free New York.
Your business relies on computers and technology to operate. Slow, unreliable networks and servers can cause unplanned downtime and affect your bottom line. The experts at Simple Tech Innovations are here to help. Their preventative maintenance program ensures that your computers and network are kept up to date and monitored for any issues, keeping your business running smoothly. They also help clients achieve HIPAA, PCI, and New York State cybersecurity compliance to keep your network safe and secure. Whatever your business IT needs are, Simple Tech Innovation should be your first call. They've won the Best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. Call them today for a free consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
I'm Las from Action Towing and Service. The people really make this place incredible. I feel at home. I love what I do. I love the people that I work with. The owner of the business is actively involved. He is a veteran. We have a very close relationship with all of the staff. Every employee there is known by name, and we really, really work hard on giving that home feel, or the family feel. Please give us an opportunity to win your business. Come down and visit us at 275 Marketplace Drive, right off of Jefferson Road.
Why do businesses choose to move their website from Wix and Squarespace to Simple Tech Innovations? Maybe it's their excellent customer service or attention.
Last spot.
Maybe it's their ability to give a truly customized solution. Or perhaps they just like the fact that Simple Tech is a local small business that builds great relationships with its clients. Whatever the reason may be, you can rest assured knowing that the local team at Simple Tech has your best interest in mind when building or updating your website. They're hands-on and love helping customers achieve their goals. But don't take my word for it. They've won the Best in Rochester 8 years in a row and have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. If your website doesn't match your dreams or isn't achieving your goals, give the professionals at Simple Tech Innovations a call today for a consultation at 585-200-3182. That's 585-200-3182. Simple Tech Innovations.
You're listening to Radio Free New York on the WYSL stations.
Welcome back to Radio Free New York. I'm your host, Andrew Hollister. We are talking about decriminalization of marijuana in New York State. Talking about the Senate bill here. It passed the Assembly, passed the Senate, pending Governor Cuomo's signature, what it does, what it doesn't, the difference between legalization and decriminalization. And before we go on, I just want to pump our Patreon for a quick moment here. We're hoping to expand Radio Free New York to a 5-day-a-week show. To do that, I need your help. I need your support. Go to patreon.com/RFNY. Stands for Radio Free New York. And if you think that you've learned something through the show, maybe you enjoy the show, please, jump on there, become a supporter. There's multiple levels of membership, and that will help us grow and expand the show. We might bring on some additional people to help a couple days a week. It could be a lot of fun. So if it's something that's important to you, that you feel like you're getting value out of it, I'd greatly appreciate the support. So we're talking about expungement now here in New York State, and how this decriminalization bill will actually open the door to create the infrastructure for expungement of records in New York State. To me, that's really, really important, because, there are people who have been victims of the SAFE Act whose court cases have been now overturned, and there's no process to expunge their records. This actually builds the infrastructure for that. And as we talked about earlier in the show, certainly that wasn't their intention. They, they weren't intending to do this. This is a pretty positive side effect that could really open the doors for some people to get their lives back. So I'm really, really excited about this, especially if it actually comes to fruition. The way it's written is, I'm not an attorney, but it seems pretty clear. Like, if somebody is found to not be guilty, or something's been overturned and they follow this expungement process, within 30 days, the records at the courthouse are even supposed to be destroyed. That crime and that conviction can't show up in a criminal background check. All of that stuff gets totally rolled back, which is something that, especially last year, Larry and I were talking about how New York State didn't have an expungement process and how we'd have to figure one out and build it out. Well, guess what? Now with this bill, if Cuomo signs it, that process is going to start, and that can really help us long term. And so here's the thing. I was trying to find out, this expungement, if it happens, how many people would that impact in New York State? I mean, that's a good thing to find out. People who are currently in jail or in prison, or have a possession charge on their record. I found two numbers. I'm guessing it's somewhere in between. The first number I found was about 600,000 people in New York would be impacted by being able to have their records expunged. The other number I found was 900,000, almost 1 million people. I'm not sure why there's a 300,000 person disparity between those numbers, but those were the only two numbers I could find. I found both of them somewhat consistently across the board. So there you go. Somewhere between 600,000 and 900,000 people might have the ability to have those records expunged, which means those people could actually now go to a job, potentially go through a background check, and have that not be a barrier to be employed. So I look at that as an extremely positive thing. You're not going to hear me talk too positively about legislation being passed in New York. It's kind of a rare situation, so soak it up while you guys can. But I see that as a good step. I think it's ridiculous that we're going decriminalization instead of legalization. I think that was just their way of kind of pandering a little bit, doing some virtue signaling. And I hear this from elected officials all the time when it comes up. They'll say, well, I would be in support of legalizing marijuana for medical in New York. It's like, yeah, we've had that for a while now. Like, you're not tricking anybody by saying that. But what I did do, I was like, you know what? How many states do currently have it legal? And where do we fall, in this? So as of this morning, when I looked this up, I found a whole bunch of different stuff here, but I'm just going to pull up exactly where the map is. So I got this, I think, from Business Insider. Business Insider, it was updated June 5th of this year, so it's fairly recent. There are currently 10 states that have marijuana legalized. I think Illinois may have just legalized, though. I'm not sure. So there might be 11 now since this article came out. Those states are Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, Colorado, Maine, Vermont, and Massachusetts.
All deep blue.
Yep, absolutely. But then you can also see the states who have it legalized for medical. So those first 10 were recreational, basically totally legalized. Maybe not totally legalized. There's, I'm sure, some regulations in there. But then you've got the other ones, and those who are looking on the screen, those are the blue on the map there, who allow for medical and medicinal use. That's Montana, Minnesota, North Dakota, Arizona, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Florida, Michigan, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Maryland, and Rhode Island. So you can see, obviously, the medical piece has a few more states, and it certainly is growing. It seems to be growing month by month. More and more states are passing it. But this brings up the inevitable question that gets asked all the time, which is that next background check. You know, how can you answer that question if marijuana is legal in your state but not legal according to the federal government?
Well, since it's a federal background check, I think you've got your answer.
Yeah. And once again, does the spelling with a J on the federal form and an H in New York State, you know,
I can make that argument. I could see a lot of judges having getting really impatient with you if you bring that up.
I'm sure. Yeah. But I wonder if somebody used that, if that would be successful or not. I have no idea. My gut tells me no, that they would see this as a negligible difference.
Yeah, it depends on the judge. I would think probably not, unless the judge was inclined to teach the New York State legislature a lesson.
Yeah, well, it very well could be. Very well could be. So my takeaways from this bill are the state legislature wanted to virtue signal. They wanted to, and I'm sure Cuomo in the background was like, I promised this in my first 100 days. Here we are, where are we at day like 180 or something, and we've got nothing. So Cuomo's got broken promises on the table, which us as New Yorkers, we're used to that. That's par for the course. So he was probably pushing for something. They couldn't figure out how to tax it, and I bet you Cuomo doesn't want it passed without some form of tax. So instead of legalization, they went with decriminalization, which gives them the ability to collect up to $200 from you. And I posed this question the other day on social media. I said, well, what happens if you don't pay your $200? Are you now you're in trouble, right? Now you might be in criminal trouble. Mm-hmm. And so that's an interesting thing there. If you don't pay the fine, well, now you might be on the hook for something. There might be a warrant out for your arrest. And somebody posted here in the comments, there was a couple questions. Let me see if I can find it here. Somebody wanted to know, well, when the cop finds you, they write you this violation ticket, you know, between $50 and $200. Do they still confiscate the marijuana from you once you've received that citation? I don't know the answer. My guess is yes, because it's still technically illegal. It's just not criminal. So my guess is you lose your marijuana, whatever that's worth. You pay the state $200, and then you got to go illegally purchase it somewhere else. So the black market's going to continue to flourish, by the way. The black market in New York is probably just going to get better because now there's less criminal action for 2 ounces or less. And, you know, people still won't have a safe place to get their marijuana. You can't go to Wegmans and get it, or, you know, Aldi's, or, you know, the local farmer's market. You're still going to have to go to a black market drug dealer to get your marijuana, which really just defeats the purpose. It really does. So the other question somebody had, Tito says, say we released all the non-violent drug offenders from prison, where would the United States stand on international ranking of prison population, and how much would the value of prisons drop? That's actually a really good question.
The value of prisons?
Yeah, well,
like you want to go out and buy yourself a prison?
Well, the value part, I wouldn't even know where to look for that. But it would be extremely interesting to see what our prison populations would look like if we pulled everybody who has possession charges or sale charges out of prison, and where we would rank internationally after that. So, guys, this is the end of Radio Free New York today. On Friday, a bunch of you guys have been asking me about vaccines. So I'm going to try to do some research for you and bring you guys the information on Friday, what I think of the vaccine bill, and how I think things could be better in New York. Catch you guys on Friday on Radio Free New York.
Only $147 a month. Only $147 a month for a new 26,000